The next time you'll see me, I will be live streaming from Kansas City. We will be on the red carpet of the 2023 NFL Draft. Could not be more excited about this. And like we said, I'll be live streaming it. Yes, we'll be interviewing these guys live on YouTube. I know it doesn't seem real. It still doesn't seem real to me, but I promise you it is. I promise you I'm not lying, and it will be on our main YouTube channel, Flock Fantasy. Of course, if you're not already subscribed there, make sure you are. The only reason I'm here is because of you. I want you to share this moment with me because it's still absolutely absurd. But outside of that, make sure you're dropping a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And as always, if you want to get your roster broken down on one of these live streams, if you want to get access to my 2023 fantasy football rankings, if you want to get access to my dynasty rankings, also Corey just put out a 45-page dynasty rookie draft guide. I can all be found on flockfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code FLOCK. You're going to get 30% off any subscription, and you will get your team broken down in a podcast by yours truly with promo code FLOCK. Link in the live chat, the description, comment section. But I think that should be about it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into our first team here. Now, this first team going to be coming out from Flaw. So thank you, my friend, for being a member of the Flock and supporting the channel. Going to be really happy to look at this. So it will be a 12-team Superflex Start 12 Titan Premium format. Welcome to use on a podcast or a live stream. What would be our best moves to ensure victory this offseason? Okay, so if we are looking at a 12-team Superflex league, I understand a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, I play one quarterback, blah, blah, blah. In reality, get used to it, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Superflex is the way of the future. I've only played in Superflex Dynasty leagues since, I think, 2017, so 6 years. Like, we've been exclusively Superflex when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football. It's by far and away the best way to play. It's how you should be playing. And what I really like about this format as well is it's not only Superflex, but look at how many starting lineup requirements we have. We are going to have to start one quarterback. We are going to have to start two running backs. We're going to have to start two wide receivers, a tight end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flex spots, and a Superflex. So if we go through and do some napkin math on this, let me just double check here. We have 6 total starters outside of the flexes. Then we have the 5 flex spots. This is a league where we're starting 12 players on a week-to-week basis. This is even a little intense for me, if I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, usually we are not starting 12 players in our own leagues, but nonetheless, I think it's great. I am coming from a standpoint in that I have a ton of experience with leagues where we are starting 12 guys. I'm sorry, 11 guys. I've played in 1 or 2 leagues where we are starting 12. It definitely runs different. And the main thing that you're going to find in this league where we're having to start 12 guys and it's a 12-teamer is wide receiver depth is king. Even if it's going to be tight end premium, even if you're going to get 1.5 points per reception for the tight end position, the primary thing I'm going to care about is just loading up as many usable wide receivers as possible on our roster. This kind of format, what actually matters a lot is going to be, I know this is a surprise to a lot of people, those depth wide receivers like Brandon Ayuk, like Christian Kirk, where if you're able to go through and roster as many players that look like Mike Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk as possible, you put yourself in a very good position whenever we go through the season and every team's dealing with injuries, every team is dealing with bye weeks, and we have Jerry Jeudy in one of our flex spots, and they're having to start Boston Scott. Like, it gives you a significant advantage through the course of the season, and here I'm a little more willing to trade our top assets and accumulate depth, specifically wide receiver depth. So let's go through this team overall. Quarterback, we have Patrick Mahomes. Obviously not going to complain about having Patrick Mahomes, but I will say this league, you're going to get a smaller advantage with a Patrick Mahomes than you would have in a shallower format. Going down to quarterback 2, completely fine having Geno Smith quarterback 2. Obviously, it looks like we could add in a third quarterback here. If we're going to go to the draft picks that we have this season, we're not going to have access to adding any other quarterback. So we're kind of rolling into the season with just this. In reality, I'm going to be fine with it considering we have to start 10 non-quarterbacks in this league. Going over to running back, we're rolling with Ramondre Stevenson, Saquon Barkley in the starting lineup. We have Miles Sanders down there in the flex. Down there on the bench, we have Kenneth Walker. So we have some strong running back depth, right? We have 4 startable running backs on a week-to-week basis. None of these guys are too old. I mean, the oldest player that we have here is Saquon Barkley, who was drafted in 2018. You have Ramondre Stevenson. Miles Sanders is 2019, or I'm sorry, Ramondre, a 2020 drafted running back, with Miles Sanders being that 2019 guy. I'm an idiot. Ramondre Stevenson's 2021. What the hell am I talking about? But nonetheless, I mean, you have the combined short-term production at the running back position with nobody that was drafted in 2017. You don't have, I mean, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon we're relying on production with. And at the same time, we don't have like Derrick Henry on this roster. Going over to wide receiver, like we were talking about at the very top, this, in my mind, is the most important spot to build around. The very top end, we have Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins. Throughout the rest of the starting lineup, we have Jerry Jeudy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk. And then down there on the bench, I mean, we really don't have anything. We have Allen Robinson, but in reality, you can't be excited about A-Rob. You can't really be that excited about Shaheed. And I don't really care about Richie James. I know Matt Collins was good for a few different spot starts this past season, but he's not going to be good this next year. So overall, I like where we stand with the wide receiver depth, and in that it looks like our bench may be a little bit weak. But if we're going to compare it to other teams in the league that we're playing with, those other teams, I can guarantee you their bench is going to be worse. And this kind of format is a war of attrition. Add in as many startable players as we can possibly get. Tight end, we have David Njoku. Like I said at the very top, even if it's a tight end premium format, I'm fine, quote unquote, punting the position. I think David Njoku is a fine option to have. We have Trey McBride down here on the bench as well. So overall, I really like this team. There's not too much I can discuss based on how we've already built. Of course, we push to win now by trading away our 2024 first. Obviously, 311, 402. These picks most likely aren't going to be anything. You're just going through and grabbing your own guy. I'm just trying to think, is there an actionable piece of advice that we can have with this roster in terms of trying to make a move today or planning out a move that we can make over the next few months to actually make a real difference? I don't see anything off the top of my head, just given the fact that this team's already built out how I would want it. We sacrifice the quarterback 2 production. We kind of punt QB3, and we just load up on as many skill positional guys as we possibly can. It's not like we have Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, one of those true elite level assets where we can say, you know what, in a format like this, it probably makes sense to do a 2-for-1 downgrade where we're going to go through and we're going to trade Justin Jefferson, and in return, we're going to get back, say, the combo of CeeDee Lamb and Drake London. Like, it's not that easy to make a move like this in this format, and we don't even have a guy that we can, but generally, that's the kind of trade that I'm looking to make. In this format in particular, please, if you're playing in like a start 8 league and you have Justin Jefferson, don't be trading away Justin Jefferson. We're talking about this format. I think it's a really good squad. I think the roster allocation makes a lot of sense. I don't really see any clear sell high names. Maybe if you wanted to sell Ramondre Stevenson and bring back a wide receiver that we feel a little bit more comfortable about for the next 3 to 4 seasons, that we're more comfortable with their range of outcomes, I think that could make sense. If you wanted to sell Ramondre Stevenson, go get a wide receiver going into year 2. Go get someone like Drake London. Go get someone like, Christian Watson. If you wanted to make a move like that, we can. Just because I am fine, as we already said, punting running back 2 as well, and just loading up on depth wide receiver after depth wide receiver after depth wide receiver. But again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I wish we would have been able to help you out a little bit more here, but I feel like you've already done a phenomenal job of actually going through and adjusting to your league format and building the correct roster construction for it. But thank you again. And as always, if there's anything that I can do for you, my friend, do not hesitate. Reach out to me immediately, and I'll be super happy to see if I can get it done, especially if there's any way that I can improve flockfantasy.com for you. But Bobcat coming out with a donation. Thank you, my man. Says, do you plan on ranking the current tight ends in the rookie class? There are a lot of good tight ends compared to other years. Do you mean like rookie tight end rankings. I know, Bobcat, you're on vlogfantasy.com. You can pull up my rookie tight end rankings there. Are you wanting me to go through and rank these tight ends as prospects compared to previous seasons? If I'm doing that off the top of my head, I'd say 2022. We definitely would rather have Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid over anybody in the class. 2021, obviously, we'd rather have Kyle Pitts. 2020, there weren't really any special tight ends in that class. I'd say 2019 as prospects, I think TJ Hawkinson as well as Noah Fant were much better than Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid as prospects, if that's what you're looking for. But please let me know. I know you're on vlogfantasy.com where you can find all our rankings. But Noah coming out, happy to see. My man says, I have the best question to ask these guys, but it could be challenging to pull off. Okay, well, text it to me, my man. Let me know what you want me to ask those guys at the NFL draft. But let's go over to our next team here. This one going to be coming out from Slevin Van Delay. Says 12-team Superflex half PPR, started a full rebuild last season. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pull up this team. And as always, my man, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. But we started the full rebuild, so expectations are pretty low. And pulling up the roster, yeah, I mean, I think that we can clearly see this team needs additions. Hopefully we have a lot to work with in terms of the rookie picks. And yes, we do. We have Bijan Robinson, so we're going to make some massive changes to this team in particular. But starting off at quarterback, I mean, usually with a Kyler Murray type player, I understand that some people would say, okay, well, you're rebuilding. Let's go through and let's sell Kyler. In reality, Kyler's value is kind of in the gutter. And any team that's going to go through and contend this next season, they're not going to be quick to trade for Kyler Murray, considering the fact that with Kyler, I mean, this is a quarterback that's not going to play the beginning of the season. So in reality, I think you're honestly just kind of better off holding him. I mean, the man was just drafted in 2019. It's not like this is a quarterback that you're worried about falling off anytime soon. So I'm probably just going to be holding Kyler Murray, see where it goes from here. Obviously, as the contract extension, and if he is injured and missing half the season, it's not really going to impact you if we're rebuilding, obviously. Going over to running back, we have Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson. I mean, we missed the boat on selling Antonio Gibson. It's not going to be possible now. You're not really going to be able to pull that off. Now, if we were to go through and look to try to make a move at running back, possibly we could sell Cam Akers. But in reality, I'm not even that excited to go through and tell you to sell Akers. I don't know what the realistic expectation is on what you're going to get for him at this point. I think you're almost better off holding, seeing what he does early on this season, because he'll be 2 years removed from the torn Achilles at that point. And we saw Deontay Foreman be able to make the comeback from the torn Achilles, but it took so damn long for him to actually be able to overcome it that you may be better off seeing if we get Cam Akers to flash at the beginning of the season and then looking to sell him there, because in reality, you're not going to get a first-round pick for Cam Akers. If we were to sell Cam Akers, you're probably getting like the 203, 204. And are we really wanting to sell for Roschon Johnson? Are we really wanting to sell for Tank Bigsby? I would rather probably just hold off and see what Cam Akers is going to give you this next season before we make a move like that. Now, going down to the bench, we have Kareem Hunt. Of course, the second Kareem Hunt signed somewhere on a rebuilding roster, you're going to go through and look to sell. I mean, the second that you have Kareem Hunt going over to the Miami Dolphins, we are selling Kareem Hunt for a second-round pick on a rebuilding team. There's just no business in us holding on to him. You're really hoping that you find a good landing spot, though. Going down to the bench, we really don't have any other plays to make a running back at wide receiver in particular. I understand if you're a rebuilding team, right? Go acquire Calvin Ridley on the cheap last year when he suspended the entire season. That way, when we come around this season and Calvin Ridley's going to be coming back, he already has the hype. You're seeing him being drafted as a high-end wide receiver too in underdog drafts. Then at that point, I think we're going to go through. I think we're going to look to flip Calvin Ridley. A return that I'd want for Ridley, I would love to get a first-round pick. Obviously, it's not going to be easy to do so. So if we're going to go through and look at our 2024 picks here, I mean, we don't really have any other second rounders outside of our own. So one thing that we could look to do is try to sell Calvin Ridley in like the 204, or Calvin Ridley in the 206, Calvin Ridley in the 209, and go get a 2024 first. I think that'd make a lot of sense, and that with Calvin Ridley, he should be pretty damn good this upcoming season. You really don't want his points and your starting lineup resulting in you getting a worse pick in the 2024 draft. I'd rather make sure we lock up the 101 in the 2024 draft, that we're able to come in with Caleb Williams in 2024 and have that core of Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Bijan Robinson to build around. I think that'd be a phenomenal spot to be in. So yeah, let's go through and let's try to sell Calvin Ridley where we can. Maybe what you could look to do is, instead of trying to sell Calvin Ridley in a second, you can maybe try to get an equivalent of a second-round pick for Brandon Cooks and try to sell Calvin Ridley in the Brandon Cooks combo for a second-round pick at that point. Hollywood Brown, I'd say very similar to Calvin Ridley. I understand Hollywood a little bit younger. Ridley drafted in 2018, stayed forever in high school. So actually, even though he comes out after 3 years at Alabama, the man's incredibly old. With Hollywood Brown drafted in 2019, only stayed 3 years in college. So he's still like 25, 26. But if we could sell Hollywood Brown in a similar package, what we were talking about with Calvin Ridley, where we sell Hollywood and a second for a future first, I would really like that. Now, of course, feel free to go through and offer Hollywood Brown for a first-round pick straight up. Feel free to offer Calvin Ridley for a first-round pick straight up. It's just probably not going to happen. You'd probably have to add in that second rounder if we want to get it done. Cole Kmet, you're really not going to get anything for at this point. I'd be just saying to hold on to Cole Kmet. Hold on to the year 2 tight ends as well. I mean, with these young tight ends, you're just not going to get enough value where it makes sense to trade them. Like if you're selling Greg Dulcich, for example, what are we really hoping to do? Are we hoping to get a mid-second round pick so we can then go through and draft Darnell Washington and hope that he has as good of a rookie season as Greg Dulcich and then also have to wait another year for that player to progress? I think you're better off holding the year 2 tight ends than trying to go through and sell them. But overall, down there on the bench, we're not really looking to do anything else. Now, of course, we need to talk about what we are doing with these rookie picks. And I know a massive thing that people try to do when they have the 101 this year is say, well, you know what, Mason? I can't compete this season. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to look to sell the 101 because if I am not competing this year, I have no use for Bijan Robinson. Guys, the man's 21, okay? Worst case scenario, and I mean worst case scenario, right? Bijan Robinson goes out this next season, and Bijan Robinson's a low-end running back 2 in fantasy. Like, Bijan Robinson has a massive failure of a rookie year, and he is extremely disappointing. He's still worth a first-round pick next year. If he tears his Achilles the first day at training camp, he's still worth a 2024 first. Very similar to 2024 picks, that 101 is so damn insulated that don't feel like you have to sell Bijan Robinson just because we're not contending this next season. Now, of course, if you wanted to, if we wanted to look for a trade package, I would be trying to sell the 101 and in return, get a top 5 pick. That way we're able to get one of Jackson Smith-Njigba, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Let's throw Will Levis in there. I mean, now that Will Levis looks like he may be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, try to get a top 6 pick in return and then 2 additional first. Like if we could sell the 101 for the 106 and say come away with Will Levis and then also get 2 2024 first round picks, I think that would make sense on a rebuilding roster. But at minimum, you need a very exciting prospect in this year's draft plus an additional 2 future firsts if we want to make a move like that. Now, 108, I think you're going to be in the sweet spot. If Will Levis falls there because people in your league have lost their minds and for whatever reason hate the guy, you take Levis easily. If not, you're going to be looking at a wide receiver in this range. You're going to be looking at Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston. Maybe you want to look at Jahmyr Gibbs if he falls. Obviously, if he falls, you're taking him, but we're assuming he's off the board. You could be looking at Zach Charbonnet if you love the Zach Charbonnet landing spot, or I don't want to tell you to take Zay Flowers. I can't do Zay Flowers at pick 8. Pick 12, you're kind of stuck in no man's land. You're really hoping that Hendon Hooker goes round 1 in the NFL draft, because if that happens, then that tier of 11 actually gets expanded to 12. Maybe you're going to get one of those players like a Quentin Johnston, a Zay Flowers. If they go to the Baltimore Ravens, you could see them falling here to you at 12. You could decide to go in that direction. Now, in the second round, it is so difficult. We'll have a video coming out tomorrow, or maybe the next day. I think it's tomorrow, where we talk about the round 2 running backs, right? We went through and we scored them in our prospect model, and we showed the historical hit rates that we should expect with these guys. Short story here, all those round 2 running backs are so damn similar that at this point, it's very difficult for me to say exactly who we're going to be taking in the middle of round 2. I would say in general, from a long-term perspective here, if we could go through and maybe package together like the 206 and the 112 and move up to the 110, that way we can get a prospect we're very excited about before the tier drop, I would love that. Like if we could go 201, 204 and get the 110, and then go 201, and then go 112, 206, 210 and go get the 109. I would love making moves like that where we can. If not, and you have to stick and pick these second round selections, I would just spray and pray with those running backs that you're going to be seeing go off the board day 2, day 3 of the NFL draft. And the second that you have a pop like Dameon Pierce, his rookie season, Tyler Algier, his rookie season, you immediately flip them for a 2024 first. But I think that's all we have for this breakdown. We actually had a decent amount of advice for this team because I feel like there are a ton of moves that we can actually look to make that make some sense for this roster and its direction going forward. But again, thank you so much, my man, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I really hope you're able to get something from it. And as always, if there's anything else I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and just ask, especially if there's any way that I can improve flockfantasy.com for you. But real quick, we actually have a couple donations coming out. Anthony, thank you. My man says, hello, thoughts on getting Jameson Williams, Hollywood Brown, and the 108s. Okay, so I'll talk about Jameson Williams just for 1 second before we get into anything else here. With Jameson, this is a wide receiver that I thought was a little overrated before the suspension. Like if you looked at where I had him ranked on flockfantasy.com compared to like where community rankings had him, like in my mind, people were too optimistic about Jameson Williams from a fantasy football perspective. I think he'll be a good real life wide receiver, but he doesn't really check too many of the boxes that we looked for as a prospect. We're selling, though, the 112. So 112 versus Jameson Williams. The 112, we're going to be looking at a player like Hendon Hooker if he goes round 1 in the NFL draft. Michael Mayer, Dalton Kidd. Like the 112 is gross. I would easily rather have the Jameson Williams over the 112, even if I wasn't a fan of Jameson Williams before the suspension. The 2024 first and second versus Hollywood Brown and the 108s. I think it is an interesting question. The 108 I would rather have over a late 2024 first because I'm comfortable with the 108, the possibility of us getting Will Levis, the possibility of us getting Jahmyr Gibbs if they fall. And if they don't, we get to take the best landing spot available between Jordan Addison, Zach Charbonnet, and Quentin Johnston. Very comfortable with that 108. And I'd rather have Hollywood Brown over the 2024 second if I'm a contender. So if those are late 2024 picks, my friend, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the Jameson Williams side, even if I'm not a massive Jameson fan. But thank you again. And Trevor coming out with the donation, thank you, says, it's looking more and more likely the Lions take a first-round wide receiver. Assuming they take Quentin Johnston, how would that affect Amon-Ra St. Brown's value/ranking? So let me go ahead. Let me pull up flockfantasy.com just to see exactly where we have St. Brown ranked. We can talk about where we would drop Amon-Ra St. Brown if you were to have Quentin Johnston go. In reality, I mean, I think it's difficult to say that the Lions would take a wide receiver. But of course, if it does happen, you have to move him down. I mean, we can't sit here and lie to ourselves and act like it wouldn't have an impact. Okay. So, hypothetical here. This is the game we're playing. Let me add myself. Let's sort here. Okay, so I have Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked at 18 overall in 12-team Dynasty Superflex startups. If we're looking at my wide receiver rankings, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked at wide receiver 7. If the Detroit Lions were to go through and take Quentin Johnston, if they were to take Jordan Addison round 1, I would move Amon-Ra St. Brown behind Chris Olave, and I'd move him in the same tier as T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he would still probably be my wide receiver 8 if that were to occur, but he would fall from being a mid-second round startup pick for us to instead most likely being a late second round startup pick for us in 12-team Superflex startup drafts. But I'm already pretty damn high on Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can see that I have him at 18 overall, and the average rank across our experts is about 23. So I'd probably just move him back to where everybody else essentially has him, but I'm assuming they would drop him a little bit further. But I hope that was able to help you out, my friend. And let's go over to Trey's team here now. Thank you, Trey, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel as always, my man. Hey, Mason, 12-team Superflex, half-point tight end premium, start 10. I snuck the win in our leagues last year, recently traded a 2024 first for George Kittle. What should I do to repeat? Okay, so let me first talk about the idea of trading a 2024 first-round pick for George Kittle. I understand the thought process. In reality, it's not necessarily the type of deal that I'm looking to make at this time of the year, right? Because if you are looking at that 2024 first, we're guaranteed for that pick to be able to increase in value as we go through the course of this offseason. There is nothing that can happen to negatively impact that 2024 first. And if we were selling it for a player like George Kittle, operating under the assumption it's a super flex format, which it is, there's not going to be much that can increase George Kittle's dynasty value from here on out. Now, of course, we're really just talking about the outside factor of maybe the 30-year-old tight end who's dealt with injuries gets hurt during training camp. Maybe Trey Lance is a starting quarterback for San Francisco this next year and they just run the ball over and over and over again and there's no passing volume there. There are a couple different things that could go wrong in terms of negatively impacting George Kittle, where if we go through and we trade away that 2024 first round pick to get him now, we are losing all flexibility that we have with our team and we're essentially locking ourselves into that decision. So I would much prefer making a move like that once we're around to August, once we're around to September. In general, this is a bad time to be trading our 2024 first round picks unless you are getting a crazy good deal. Now, starting off with this team, of course, we want to be looking at quarterback. At QB, we have Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Going down to the bench, we have Geno Smith. Okay, so yeah, this is beautiful. I mean, I'll give a shout out to Brock Purdy here. Maybe he's starting quarterback for San Fran this next season. But starting off strong, I mean, it is hard to imagine having a better quarterback core than Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy. I mean, we can easily say that Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts are the third and fourth overall players in this format. In a 12-team Superflex league, they're the third and fourth overall valued players. So having those cornerstone assets that will give us the elite production both in the short term and the long term, you should feel very excited about that, especially when we essentially have a guaranteed starting quarterback, whether that's Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, or Brock Purdy. But as our quarterback 3, we have a guaranteed starter just in case we have an injury for a stretch between those two top guys. Now, going over to RB, we have Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler. So Jacobs is actually surprisingly young. The man drafted in 2019, but drafted at 20 years old. So he's still pretty damn young. But still, if we're looking at both of these running backs, there's almost nothing that can happen this next season for them to increase their dynasty value 12 months from now. It is guaranteed decline, but that's not to say we shouldn't roster players like this. It just needs to be said to highlight the fact that the only time we want to be rostering a Josh Jacobs, the only time we want to be rostering an Austin Eckler is if we are a contending dynasty team. If we plan on competing this next season, which we can tell by the rest of this roster, we probably are going to be. Now, going down to the flex spot, we have A.J. Dillon. Down there on the bench, we have Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zach Moss, Kenneth Gainwell. So, I mean, we're fine at running back. There's not too much that we can be discussing here. I think Dillon's a fine RB3 in Dynasty. I think, honestly, Dillon's probably getting too much hate at this point. Going over to wide receiver, we have Metcalf, Devonta Smith. So, we have Smith stacked up with Jalen Hurts. We have DK Metcalf stacked up with Geno Smith. We have Brandon Ayuk down there in the flex. And then going down to the bench, we have Juju Smith-Schuster, so we're great at wide receiver depth. Keep in mind, we just traded a 2024 first-round pick for George Kittle, so when we're looking at the starting lineup, it's Kittle in there. It's not Cade Otton. So overall, it is a phenomenal team, and if we're looking at what we have at pick 10, we're in a very good spot, right? Pick 10, like we've talked about over and over again, you will get one of those players before the teardrop. And you could honestly, now that Zay Flowers is sliding ahead of some of the other wide receivers, I know some people like Zay Flowers over Jordan Addison. I know some people like Zay Flowers over Quentin Johnston. I personally don't, but I know others do. So if Zay Flowers were to slide ahead of one of those players, you could get your choice between two of Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Zach Charbonnet. That's a possibility. So I think pick 10 is a phenomenal spot to be in. And if we're talking about any general team needs for this roster, there are none, right? Like, I mean, what can we say? I would say the only thing that this team could use is an additional running back or wide receiver. Just an additional skill positional guy. That way, we're not having to rely on a Rashad Bateman breakout. That way, if we have an injury or two, we're not having to go through and start Juju Smith-Schuster each and every week. So overall, top to bottom, I think this is an incredibly strong team. really the only thing that we can say about it is it would make sense for us to go through and for us to get an extra wide receiver or running back, which we are going to have at the 110. So that's why that pick 10 in my mind is so important for this team, both in the short term and the long term. Obviously, by trading away our 2024 first, we look a lot stronger on paper, but we also lose the ability to, if things go wrong, pull the ripcord and maybe just push for 2024 instead. No, like we're all in for 2023. So there's really no consideration to ever sell any of these veterans at this point when we push our chips in the middle here. If we were to go through and make any other move, and I'm just nitpicking here, this is an incredibly strong roster. The only thing I don't like we were saying, is selling that 2024 first for George Kittle. Even if we had a massive need at tight end, I would have probably just rather waited to the beginning of the season to make sure he was healthy and actually producing before we bought him. But regardless, like we said, that's just one small nitpicking thing. If I'm trying to come up with another thing to nitpick, it'd be nice to see if we could get some correlation between that Cincinnati Bengals offense. Like if we could somehow package up Brandon Ayuk with another piece and move to T. Higgins, I think that'd make a lot of sense. Now, the issue is exactly what we could pull off in a deal like that. One thing that I'd be looking at, and it's obviously extremely dependent on the T. Higgins owner. I think a lot of people who maybe are Trey Lance believers wouldn't go through and pull the trigger here, but there are a lot of people that love Brock Purdy, especially 49ers fans. They love Purdy. If we could somehow trade like Brock Purdy as well as Brandon Ayuk and go get T. Higgins in, I think that won't have a fundamental difference on this roster for 2024. I don't really ever seeing us start Brock Purdy when we have Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield. And two things can be possible at the same time. Brock Purdy, maybe he does turn into a decent starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers from a real life perspective. But if he has realistically no team investment, the job security isn't really there, where if he has a bad stretch of 4 games, he can get yanked real quick. And on top of this, he has no rushing upside, which will severely cap him from a fantasy football perspective. So Brock Purdy could still be a good real life quarterback, and it may not necessarily matter too much if things go off the rails, if that makes sense. But I think that's all we have for this breakdown. I mean, obviously we're nitpicking here, trying to come up with anything that we can do to improve this team. It's already a very strong roster. And going back to the selling Brandon Ayuk idea, I mean, in general, I honestly think Ayuk's a little bit overvalued in Dynasty based off of some comments that we've had from people in our Discord, based off of some comments that we've had in the YouTube chat, as well as the YouTube comment section. Like, I remember saying that Christian Watson was ranked rounds ahead of Brandon Ayuk for me, and people lost their minds. Maybe we can pull up flockfantasy.com real quick and see where I have Christian Watson versus Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, I have Christian Watson ranked at 47. How low do I have Ayuk here? Oh, you can't even see this. Sorry. Let me swing this back around for you. So, yeah, I have Brandon Ayuk ranked as my wide receiver 28. I have him directly behind Treylon Burks, DJ Moore, Jahan Dotson, Deebo Samuel, Jerry Jeudy. I understand I'm probably too low on Brandon Ayuk. I know people don't like it. I mean, you can even see that the analyst average for Ayuk is actually 61, where I have him down at 73. So yeah, everybody else on the site's a lot higher on Brandon Ayuk than I am. And going over to Christian Watson, I have Christian Watson at 47, whereas the analyst ranking on the site is actually 44. So, I mean, even the analysts on our site, including myself, of course, have Christian Watson ranked like 17 spots ahead of Brandon Ayuk. I don't know why we went off on this tangent. It's not important at all for what we were talking about, but thank you again, my man, for being a member of the flock. But let's go over and let's check out our next team. This one coming out from Lil Steroid says, "Hey Mason, longtime fan. I'm in a 10-team PPR 1 quarterback dynasty league looking to compete this year. Your opinion on the team and any suggestions would be appreciated. Welcome to use on YouTube." Thank you so much, my man, for being that longtime fan and supporting the channel. So let's go ahead and let's pull this up. And oh dear God, this is a horrible screenshot. I may actually not be able to do this for Lil Steroid. I'm probably gonna have to reach out to him personally and ask for a better screenshot. Safari won't even let me zoom in on that screenshot. So low quality. But let's skip over then. In that case, let's go over to Couch Monkey's team. Says, "Hey Mason, been checking out your videos for a while and finally joined the flock. Here's the roster. It's a 10-team, 2-quarterback cap PPR, start 11. Been in the league for over 10 years and blew up my team last season. Have the 101, 103, 105, 109 this year. No first in 2024. Planning on dropping 5 to 7 players before the draft. Would love to get your thoughts on what to do with the picks. Thanks, man. No, thank you so much. And that is awesome, my man, that you've been in this Dynasty League for 10 years. Like, I started playing Dynasty in 2014. So I've been playing Dynasty Fantasy Football for about 9 years now. So I don't want to say I'm going to catch up to you. Obviously, I can never catch up to you if you started that year before me. But nonetheless, I'm excited to say next year I'll been playing Dynasty for 10 years. But I guess maybe we're going on our 10th. I don't know how you break it down. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's look into this team. And first thing I want to do out the gate is I want to find the guys that we are going to be cutting. So saying you're going to drop 5 to 7 players. Let's come up with the easiest drops that we can have here. Byron Pringle. Pretty easy drop. I mean, there are a lot of easy drops here, but anyway. Okay. And another thing that I need to point out is if we don't have our 2024 first, even if we decided to tear it down last year, we're going through and we're doing everything that we can to try to compete this season if we don't have our 2024 first. Now let's come up with these drops. Cameron Brate, drop. Kendall Hinton, drop. Dwayne Eskridge, kind of funny. The man's going into year 3. He was drafted in the 2nd round by the Seattle Seahawks. But at the same time, he stayed forever at Western Michigan. So he's very old. I would actually keep Dwayne Eskridge in comparison to like Byron Pringle. Let's drop Byron Pringle. Let's drop Scotty Miller. We're at 4 there. Let's drop Justice Hill. We're at 5. Let's drop Craig Reynolds. We're at 6. I mean, hard knock star. Let's drop Sony Michel. We're at 7. And we'll drop Chase Daniel. We're at 8. Yeah, so we can even keep Dwayne Eskridge. We don't have to make that move. But let's go and let's look at the roster before we actually look at the rookie picks more in depth. Quarterback, we need help. Okay, this is going to be a 2-quarterback league compared to a super flex format. I actually think we should be making an adjustment. I mean, I used to think way back in the day that super flex 2-quarterback was the same because you're going to go through and you're going to look to start 2 quarterbacks each and every week, regardless in a super flex league. There's a fundamental difference. I mean, in a super flex format, and this bleeds into like the price that you're going to find with these guys. In that super flex format, you will find teams that can win their league with only one starting QB. If they are loaded elsewhere, you can have a team in your league win with only one starter. In a 2-quarterback format, that will essentially never happen. Because if you only have one starting quarterback in a 2 QB league, instead of being able to go through and throw in a wide receiver 3 where we can maybe expect 13 points per game and lose out on the 19 points per game that we're going to get from the quarterback, there we're at a deficit of 6 points. Here, if you don't have the 19 points per game from that second quarterback, you're at a deficit of 19 points compared to 6. So quarterback is definitely at a premium. And in the majority of 2 QB leagues that I've played in, you're actually going to see that it does matter. Like you are seeing a higher price tag when you try to go through and trade for those QBs. So we don't really have the players that we love at the top. We have Daniel Jones, but that's about it. So if we're looking at the picks that we have this year, we have the 101, 103, 105, and 109. I would say 101, obviously we're taking Bijan. Doesn't matter if it's 2 QB or not. 103, 105, I think we are going to go ahead and double tap the quarterback position here. I think you're most likely going to be taking just your 2 favorites of Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. If we wanted to slide in Jackson Smith and Jigba there, I would be fine about it because it's a 10-team league and JSN is just phenomenal. I mean, my friend, I know you are on flockfantasy.com. Like, go over and look at the most recent article that we just put up. I mean, we just uploaded this. We essentially went through and updated our wide receiver prospect model and put in the wide receivers inputs this year. And I was surprised to see exactly how high Jackson Smith and Jigba is. So we just uploaded it. So I would say go read it, and maybe it swings you one direction or another when we're looking at the 105 on if we should be taking like a Will Levis or JSN, but definitely at least at one of those picks, whether it's the 103 or 105, be coming away with a quarterback. Hopefully 103 we get lucky. Maybe JSN goes at 2 and we're able to get Bryce Young. Running back, we're going to have Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson as our 2 starters. Javonte Williams down there as our number 3 guy. And then down there on the bench, we don't have too much. No, we have Tyler Algier. Hell yes. Phenomenal running back group. I mean, we have the long-term production as well as the short-term upside with all those young, productive running backs. Wide receiver, we have Lamb, Godwin, Lockett, Christian Watson, Rashad Bateman in the starting lineup. And then going down to the bench, we do need some wide receiver depth as well. So considering the fact that we can start up to 6 wide receivers on a week-to-week basis in this format, going back to what we were discussing, I'm fine if instead of going through and double tapping the quarterback position, pick 3 and 5 there, I would be completely fine if we wanted to take Jackson Smith and Jigba at one of the spots. Like if you have a sense of what the team at 4 is going to do, right? And you're saying, man, you know what? The team at 4 is probably either going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba or Jahmyr Gibbs, specifically because this is a 10-team league where we can start up to 6 wide receivers. I'd be fine if you wanted to go Jackson Smith and Jigba at 3 and then see whatever quarterback falls to at 5, as long as we are getting one of those quarterbacks. One of those quarterbacks. I think JSN, you can go ahead and you can take him. I think he would be an immediate day 1 difference maker for you and obviously provide a lot of long-term upside as well. But now going over to what we have at tight end, we have Mark Andrews. In general, in this kind of format where we have so many starters, where we're starting, I want to say 11 guys, I am generally fine punting tight end in a format like this because at the end of the day, the percentage of the starting lineup that they're going to account for is going to be very low compared to what we are going to have with the other positions, such as wide receiver. However, with Mark Andrews, I can't really say to go through and sell Andrews. I feel like his value is too depressed where it's better off just keeping him as a hold, see what happens. And once he gets that pop in value and people are starting to treat him like an elite tight end again, then at that point we can go through and we can look to sell Mark Andrews and we can pivot off to maybe a wide receiver we're very excited about, like Drake London. I would actually rather have the elite level wide receiver in this format, but I really like where Andrews is in terms of the value proposition. So we're going to be looking to hold him from there. And we also don't have any other backup tight ends, but going back to what we were looking to do, not only at the 101, 103, 105, but at the 109, it is an interesting spot because if your league mates don't like Will Levis for whatever reason, I've seen Levis falling here, especially if it's a 10-team superflex / 2 quarterback league compared to a 12-teamer. I think you're completely fine to go through and take Levis. Now, let me pull up flockfantasy.com real quick and just outline our rankings in terms of our rookies. So let's look at our rookie rankings. We're going to go ahead. We're going to throw me on here. So you'll see I have it broken down. Bijan 1, Young, Richardson, Stroud, JSN, Levis. To be honest with you, we need to go through and I'm going to do this right now, right? Let's update these rankings. I think we need to have Levis higher with the rumors that he is going to go 2 or 3. The thing is, I have Will Levis ranked so much higher than everybody else at this point. I can't do Levis over London. I can't. Can I? I will if he goes pick 1 or 2. If he goes pick 1 or 2 in the NFL draft, I will. But nonetheless, this is how we have the rankings. So if Levis were to fall, I think that you're going to be in a good spot to grab Levis at 9. Let's go back to rookies only. If not, we have Jahmyr Gibbs falling. Oh, we need to sort by myself. We'll take Gibbs, then Johnston, Addison, Zach Charbonnet. In my mind, all these players are incredibly close. I think the wide receiver maybe makes a little bit more sense for your own roster, but I'm going to be fine if we want to wait until we actually have the NFL draft capital landing spot to choose between those 3 guys. But that's really going to be the range that I'm looking for at that 109 pick. And we also have to take into consideration that this is that team that is not looking to build for the long term as their number 1 priority. Of course, it's something that we have to be thinking about in the back of our minds, but at the same time, we really need to be prioritizing scoring points this year, winning this year. Because at the end of the day, we don't have our 2024 first, so we are highly incentivized to try to go all in the best chance we get. But I think that's all we have for that breakdown. Again, thank you so much, my man, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I really hope that it was able to help you out. I really hope you were able to get something from it. And as always, if there's anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out to me and let me know, especially if there's any way that I can improve flockfantasy.com. But let's go ahead and let's dive into our next team here. This one coming out from V-Boon says, it's been awesome to find Flock Fantasy. As a relatively new Dynasty player, your content has been really helpful. I'm headed into my third rookie draft after taking over an orphan team. It's a 10-team start 9, 6-point passing touchdown format, full PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. My biggest question for you is how to handle this year's rookie draft given our current team. After 2 years of not being competitive, I'm looking for advice to avoid being a perpetual rebuilder. I hear all the time that quarterbacks are king, but I'm worried about drafting Stroud or Richardson at the 103 won't really move the needle for us in terms of competing, and I'll continue spinning my wheels at the bottom of the standings. Should I target someone like Jason instead? Perhaps should we trade back? Okay, so let's go ahead and let's dive into this. First off, we need to get a sense of if this team will be rebuilding or contending this next season. And starting at quarterback, I think we're in a very good spot. Having Trevor Lawrence and Kenneth Walker, I think you can be very excited about this, and particularly in this format, right? Where in this format, you're only starting 9 guys. It's unlike the start 12 league that we looked at earlier. It's unlike the start 11 league that we looked at earlier. If we were looking at the percentage of your starting lineup output that the quarterbacks are going to account for, they are going to be significantly higher in this kind of format than they would be in that start 11, than they would be in that start 12. So I really like the idea of trying to go out there and build around the quarterback position here when we get the chance. And hell, I mean, you're getting the shot here. You are able to go through, you are able to build around Trevor Lawrence as well as Tua. And at the 103, I'm not going to lie to you, whenever we're seeing that we don't really have too many players that we're too excited about down there on the bench. I mean, we have Brock Purdy, but in reality, I don't think you're locked and loaded for Brock Purdy to be a starting quarterback for the next 3 to 4 years. Even if it doesn't necessarily change your starting lineup immediately, I would personally rather go through and at 3, take your favorite quarterback. Of course, I'm going to update my rankings the second we have the NFL draft on flockfantasy.com to give you a sense of who I would take. But I think you go with your favorite quarterback. Make sure that week in and week out, especially in this start 9 league, we are going to have some of the best quarterback play in this league over the next 5 seasons. Which if we add in that rookie quarterback at the 103 and we have Lawrence, Tua, and that rookie, I think that we can be confident that we are very strong at that position. Now, going over to running back, we have Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery. Going down to the bench, I mean, we are currently sitting with Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce. I knew you were talking about trading Dameon Pierce for possibly Christian Kirk, and that would give us that correlation between Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk. I think if we go back to the team that we looked at the very beginning of this live stream, where it's that start 12 league where you're having to go through and you're having to start like 6 to 7 wide receivers each and every week, there I would probably sell Dameon Pierce, and I would probably try to go out there and get Christian Kirk. However, in a shallow format like this, where we can only start 4 wide receivers on a week-to-week basis, I would much prefer just holding on and keeping the running back. Wide receiver depth, especially in a 10-team league where we're only able to start up to 4 guys and we only have to start 2 wide receivers, wide receiver depth is not going to matter that much. Christian Kirk is not really going to move the needle for a team like this. So no, with this team in particular, I'm actually probably just going to go through. I'm probably going to keep what we currently have. Now at wide receiver, we have Devonta Smith, Deontay Johnson, Courtland Sutton, Brandon Ayuk, and then down there on the bench, we really don't have much either. So this is a team that definitely needs wide receiver help. I'm not going to lie about that. This team needs help with wide receiver. And I'm hesitant to say this because I know you've been rebuilding over the past few seasons, and I don't want to say this. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I think that this team has a phenomenal foundation, but cannot truly compete this next season. It's a tight end premium format as well. If we're going to go through and look at what we have at tight ends, we don't really have anything. We have Hunter Henry and Brevin Jordan. So with the lack of quality flex play, with the lack of tight end production, with our wide receiver 2 being Deontay Johnson or Brandon Ayuk, however you cut it, if this was a 14-team league, I'd say let's go for it. Let's try to win this year. If this was a 12-team league, I'd say let's probably wait. Let's see how the season starts. But with this being a 10-team format, I don't think this team has enough firepower. And what I'm afraid that you're doing and why this team is in that perpetual rebuild mode is we're not hitting the hard reset. We're not doing the hard work. We're not putting in the pain of earning the 101. Like, imagine this team if instead of having the 103 this year, we had the 101, right? We decided, you know what? Let's tear it down. Let's sell Brandon Ayuk for a 2023 first last year. Let's sell Deontay Johnson and a future second. Let's get a 2023 first. Let's have as few points in our starting lineup as possible. Let's earn the 101. And then instead, this team was loaded up with draft assets this season, including our own pick being Bijan Robinson at the 101. That's how we can not be stuck in the middle. Not be stuck in perpetual rebuild mode where, I mean, by the time Deontay Johnson's no longer productive, the rookie we drafted at the 104 4 years ago is finally producing, and we're always kind of stuck in the middle of the road. So what I would personally look to do here is hit the hard reset. Sell the veterans. Sell anybody that's almost guaranteed to lose value over the next 12 months. For instance, a running back on his second contract, David Montgomery. See ya. Bye. Smell you later. Brandon Ayuk going on to his second deal. Bye. See ya. Smell you later. Give me a 2024 first round pick. Deontay Johnson. Bye. Gone. See you later. That way, if we can go through, we can earn the 101 this next season. We can accumulate 2024 picks. And then we have the foundation to build around of Trevor Lawrence, Tua, say we get Bryce Young at the 103 or CJ Stroud at the 103, whoever the hell you want, Kenneth Walker, and then we're able to bring in Caleb Williams next year, sell one of these quarterbacks, then I think we can be a true contender. But I hate to say it, you can always go forward and you can always try to compete this season before you hit that reset button and see how the beginning of the season goes. But I think that team probably should look to build for 2024 and earn the 101. But I think that's all we have for this live stream. Again, thank you so much, everybody that was here. I truly do appreciate y'all. And as always, if there is anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate. Let me know, especially if there's any way that I can improve flockfantasy.com. We actually just had Corey right this second, right before we went live. He went through and he put out his... Let me pull this up for you. I'm sorry. Just want to pull this up and show you. So you can see I recently put out our Dynasty research book here, and Corey just put out the Dynasty Wall Street Journal. So I definitely go check this out. He says he spent over 200 hours this offseason building databases and watching guys, tape, go through and give you in-depth analysis on every rookie in this class. So definitely go check that out. Of course, you can find it on flockfantasy.com. You want to get your podcast broken down. You want to get your team broken down on a podcast like this, as well as access to those draft guides, as well as access to all our dynasty rankings, as well as access to all our premium content. Find the link in the live chat. Promo code FLOCK, 30% off any subscription, and promo code FLOCK. That's how you get your team broken down on a live stream like this. But thank you again, everyone. Really appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you at the NFL Draft live stream on the main channel. But thank you so much for everything.